It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geek podcast. My name's Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello.
Unfortunately, Liz could not be with us this week, but we hope she will be with us next week, and she's missed, and Liz, we love you.
Woo.
So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy, guys?
Well, I got a little good news this past week.
Woohoo!
And
Good news is good.
And this is one of those take your small victories where you can type moments.
Mm-hmm.
A few months back, I've even lost track of how many, probably 4 or 5. One of the podcasts I listened to shut down. Kind of without warning. It just kind of came on. They kind of hopped on Twitter and said, "Hey, we're going off the air for a while. And I don't know if we'll be back." And so I was like, "Okay." So then fast forward to about, I don't know, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now. All of a sudden I see a tweet from them saying, "Hey, we got a new episode up." I'm like, "What? Wait." So I was excited. And they are back to their old shenanigans, which is a lot of fun. So The Rock Show with Gully and Joe is back on. They are releasing episodes pretty consistently again. And they're still them, so they're back. Hopefully this is for good. I mean, they've got a fun show that they do. They are a couple of crazy-ass British guys who love them some metal. So if you're maybe interested in that sort of thing, they're back. Go check them out. I'll stick a link in there in the notes, of course. But I was excited.
Cool.
I was really kind of bummed when they went away, because there was like it was just like it was kind of one of those I can't do this anymore right now type things. But they're back. They got their shit together and they're rolling again.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, that's cool.
Alrighty, Les?
I didn't do all that much. Kicked around my local store a bit and just kind of occupied a chair there. So, pretty inactive myself. But it was worth it.
Not a lot of reading going on.
Just a few chapters of here and there. The shop, they helped get me through my week. Jonesing for comics, things like that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
Jonesing for comics. What's that? Said the guys doing the comics podcast.
Alrighty. For me, still trying to catch up on reading. I had actually picked up a couple weeks ago the Doom Patrol, the Silver Age. I think it's Volume 1. And then I also picked up the Epic Collection. Of course, if you're a long-time listener to this show, you know I'm a big fan of Epic Collections. This is Fantastic Four, The Coming to Galactus, which was one of our, I think it was an honorable mention a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So I've been kind of reading a little bit off of both of those, as well as trying to catch up with my floppies, and it's been kind of fun. Especially, nice little time warp. You're reading modern comics and then going back to early to mid 60s It's a little different, but I mean, I'm enjoying the ride. So
Culture shock.
yeah, a little bit. Well, especially the way Stan Lee and Jack Kirby kind of handled Sue back then.
Well, yeah, it was a different time.
It was a different time.
It was a very different time.
And it's actually funny because I thought about that. I guess it was just today. I happened to catch the cover image of Fantastic Four number 11 or 100, if I could talk, which is one of my favorite covers because it's the Four plus Crystal, who was a member at the time, and battling all their greatest enemies. You got Doom, you got Red Ghost and the Apes, and Super Skrull and Puppet Master and all of them. And everybody's battling except Sue. She's just standing there going, and like, wow. I mean, even
Crystal's fighting, right?
But Sue is just standing there going, oh my god. Like, wow.
Why? Right? Why would you do that? That's amazing. I mean, I'm sure there's something in context there because I will admit, if I've not read all of that stuff, I've seen bits and pieces of it here and there, but you'd think there'd have to be some context there for her to be, well, useless. I can't think of a better term for it. I don't know. I'm looking at it from 2018, so I'm sure it doesn't make sense no matter what.
Right. Right. Yeah, pretty bad.
Well, if it's the typical Stan Lee story, then she is going to be major in the whole tale. She may even be the one to defeat the most or the majority or whatever you want to call it of the villains.
Solve the problem.
She will, but back during those days, it was she would solve it under direction by Reed. But later years, it will be, oh, I could figure it out. I could do this. And back then, even she used her powers more defensively and all that. And when you get to the John Byrne and Walt Simonson and whoever else you want to throw in there, their errors of writing, she started using her powers a little bit more offensively. So she actually she could possibly be the most powerful member of the group, depending on how you write her.
Right.
But she was handled as the weakest during the early days, which, like you said, it was kind of the sign of the times. So, oh well, didn't really mean to get on that subject. That
tangent.
But it is what it is. It was what it was.
Right, and it's part of that culture shift thing, that jumping back and forth, switching between books. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, something like that. Alrighty, before we get on to this week's discussion, I want to take a couple moments to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for sponsoring the Fellowship of the Geeks. In addition to their evergreen deals, such as 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off select pre-order manga titles, 50% off Nick and Dent comics, there is a new deal that is being run until the end of August, and that is 50% off comics. Now, there's some criteria here. So to read the fine print, why don't you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors tab, and you will see all the information you need regarding their latest deal, which is awesome. And you can click on the image that's underneath, or you can click on either or the links that are provided, and I'll take you to their website and let them know that we sent you their way and knock yourself out. Once again, thank you, Things from Another World, for sponsoring the fellowship. Okay. If you've been listening to our shows the last few weeks, first of all, thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you may have caught us talking about a secret project, a secret assignment.
Yay, it's secret project time. Woo.
There you go. And with this week, we will reveal our secret project, or our secret assignment, or whatever you would like to deem it. What we had done is it was supposed to be one, but it turned into two. We grabbed two graphic novels, and the four of us, including Liz was part of this as well, of course, and we read them, and we're going to do a kind of a group review on the podcast. So the two books that we chose were A Study in Emerald, which is it's based off the Neil Gaiman short story with art by Raphael Albuquerque. And then the other one is The Artist Behind Superman, the Joe Shuster story by Julian Volo. I'm sorry, I know I butchered that name and I apologize. With art by Thomas Campy. So with that, we're just going to do a little kind of a discuss these two books and give our thoughts. And with that, I'm opening the floor to whoever would like to go first, and whatever book they like to go with first. There you go.
All right. Well, I'll jump us off, and I'm going to jump us off with the Shuster book. Put briefly, I really like this book. This is a graphic novel, and it is definitely different in that it is. I mean, it's biographical. Obviously, it's based in reality. It does state that it is essentially a fictionalized version of Shuster's life, and that's fine. You almost have to, because very few of us have lives that are exciting enough to hold the interest of a graphic novel audience for 165 pages.
Right.
But this is a very interesting story, and it is a story that I think is really important. It is really important that a story like this gets told. And that said, it is also a really depressing story.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, man. This poor guy. I find myself wondering how much of that was, and I suspect that part was the fictionalization, the fictionalizing part of that was that it was kind of condensed. I suspect this is just from me reading it.
Right.
I think that this probably was. I don't want to say they cut out all the happy parts of this guy's life, because they really didn't. But I think that the story here is kind of the not happy parts of his life, and the effect that the comics industry had on his personal life and on his career. I think that's the story that had to be told here, and that's not a happy story.
No, it's not.
He was not treated well. I mean, and it's hard for me to be too hard on the comics industry, though it seems if this book is written with any kind of slant, it's probably against the comics industry. But I kind of don't view it that way, because honestly, I mean, it was this all started at the beginning of the comics industry. There wasn't one before this, so
right.
They didn't know what they were doing any more than Shuster did. Did Joe Shuster make some mistakes? Did Jerry Siegel make some mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. Did the people running the comic book companies make mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. And Shuster ended up being on the short end of a lot of that.
If I can jump in there real quick, yeah, there was a lot of mistakes on both sides, but I think they were taken advantage of.
Oh, totally.
I mean, totally
doubt
taken
about
advantage of. Yeah,
No question. I think probably maybe more so than anybody really intended. That's kind of my slant on it. Is I think Siegel and Schuster were screwed completely, more than once. I don't know. I think it was done from. I mean, and I'm the guy who brings this up all the time from a business perspective. It was done for the sake of the company. I don't think I don't think there was anything personal about it, but it really did a number on it. I mean, and it messed up publisher creator relations for decades.
Yeah.
In the process, I mean, it really screwed things up through the 70s. Which this whole thing obviously started in the 30s. It was not a good business to be in for 40 years. I think there are probably arguments that 40 years beyond that, it's still dodgy, whether it's a good business to be in at times, depending on what you're doing and all. But yeah, it's a tough story, but I think it's an important one.
And in some fairness to the publisher, since I've come out and said that they screwed these Siegel and Schuster, they had no way of knowing that the character they created would have the staying power. But after a certain point, when they realized, hey, he's not going away, you would think that they would have tried to do something, and there was opportunities to come back and go, you know what? We didn't realize what we had here and do something, because the Siegel and Schuster, as it's mentioned in this book, went back several times to try to get the character back. And of course they weren't going to do that, but they could have done some additional compensation or something. It really didn't happen until the 70s, and this does take place. For those who've not read the book yet, it takes place in 75, and it's right around the time that there was the announcement of them doing the Superman movie, and that's what led Siegel to write essentially a 9-page statement, basically cursing anybody who was involved with this, because they were saying, because they were not going to see a dime,
because they legitimately had nothing else they could do.
Right.
Other than just curse them. That's all they could do, because they had no control, no power at all in the situation. Yeah.
Go ahead, Les.
Oh, go ahead.
You've been quiet. Go ahead.
I was going to say this was an extremely good book. It did tell a lot of the stories. I have read other books that talk about the beginnings of comic books. This one was pretty engaging. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this and putting my mindset at that time. It is based on Schuster's thoughts, and they were royally screwed, which has already been established, but they were royally screwed by the publishers. They had a viable character that made millions of dollars, yet they were not, obviously they were not compensated. We've already hashed this, but it was told so well. And my thoughts go out to the people that put this out, because this is pretty friggin' amazing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
No. Oh.
Mike was going to say something. So
I was. To bring it back, I mean, to pull away from the story and go back to the book itself. Yes, I agree. The book did a delightful job of staying in Shuster's voice the whole way through, which,
Right.
I mean, given that it wasn't written by Shuster, that's impressive. I mean, that takes some work. That takes some research, and there's a bibliography in the back of this book to listing some of the sources that he got stuff from. So, I mean, feel free to, if you read this book and it piques your curiosity, there's a list of books in the back to go check out more information on this stuff. The other thing I wanted to say about the book itself is the art.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the style of art for this. It's an interesting style in that it actually manages to work really well throughout the whole period of time that this book takes place in, which is like a 50-year period of time, or 60. It manages to, it works all the way through. There's never a point, because, I mean, sometimes you'll get something going in an artistic style, and you get to, like, for example, the 50s, and it just doesn't work for that. The way this book was drawn and laid out, it just works. It doesn't, any changes that take place over the years through the story are very subtle things, like clothing style changes and that sort of thing, and otherwise it's very consistent, and it just works really well. It actually, I'm not gonna lie, it took me a little bit. I had to get into the book a little ways before I started to get that, but I thought it just worked really well for that. I thought the art style was really well done.
I agree, and I also want to applaud them for actually incorporating Schuster's art whenever they kind of showed, like, him actually drawing or something like that. They actually used actual Schuster art they incorporated into the book, which I thought was a very nice touch, because they didn't really have to do that, but they did.
Yeah, he could have just eyeballed it and tried to make it look vaguely like Schuster's art, but yeah,
right.
It was. I think the way they did it means more.
Yeah,
I agree.
In addition to the bibliography, there is a notes section, which I would advise everybody to kind of take a look at, because it goes through and almost literally page by page, and tells you the references to where some of this information came from, and all as in it. So it's kind of interesting to go back and look at that as well.
Yep.
That's
the kind of thing that's real easy to skip over, but it's also really important at times, and especially in a book like this where there is actually so much history involved.
Yes, because
it's really helpful to get the nuances.
Right. There's only so much you can do, especially in a graphic novel, and when it's a history of a person, and so much you have to cover so much detail in a limited space and time. Then yes, some of this information gets sacrificed. So here you go. You've got this at the back, and I applaud them for doing that as well. I've told you guys this when we kind of done some preliminary talk about this book. If you're a Bob Kane fan, you're probably not going to be one after reading this. They do not really paint a kind picture to him, but
other sources I've seen don't either. So
that's right.
In that time frame for that particular incident.
Yeah.
I haven't read extensively on that, but what I have read, that was not a good move on his part.
No,
to put it mildly, it was kind of a dick move. So it's kind of hard to paint that in a pretty light.
No, you can't. But if you know the history, you know what has happened, especially in the creation of Batman and with Bob Kane. You kind of go, okay, yeah, I can actually believe that this happened.
Right. Who is Bill Finger?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't know, then it's because of Bob Kane.
It's because of Bob Kane.
That's why you don't know that name.
But there's been work on that. I mean, he's now getting co-creation credit on Batman, and you see that on every issue. You see it in the TV shows and movies now. So they're working to reconcile that, and so.
Yep.
I'm not trying to defend, but Kane did draw up a contract so he would retain Batman. And a lot of others did not. But Kane had I believe it was his father who was a lawyer.
It was his father that did it, yeah.
So,
and yes, that bravo for him and his dad for doing that, but it still doesn't mean that he can be a total dick and do what he did.
No, I agree.
Because he could have helped out, and
right. He could have included Bill Finger in that with him.
Well, not only that, but kind of going back to the book, and what we're referencing is Siegel and Schuster actually approaching Bob Kane to help him out with one of their attempts to get their character back, and he said he would, and he double-crossed them.
Yes.
So
he ratted them out.
So he's obviously not a nice guy.
Right.
I mean, here he is, doing really, really well. Meanwhile, Siegel and Schuster are barely surviving, and their character is just as popular as Bob Kane's character. And it's literally a night and day version.
Right. By then, Siegel and Schuster had pretty much been drummed out of the industry.
Right.
I mean, that's where the whole thing kind of started in the first place. That's why they were trying to get it back, was because they couldn't work otherwise. They couldn't get work in the comics industry anymore. So, yeah. Whereas Kane was very successful. Anyway, we probably really shouldn't be picking on Bob Kane here too much. I mean, yes, the statement was made.
Well, yes. But yes, a very, very sad, depressing book, but it was a very enlightening book because you don't really know what goes on, and especially like you said back that time when it was literally the early beginning days of comics. I mean, if you follow creators on social media now, and of course both of us do, you get some insight, but it's so totally different from what was being dealt with back in the day. But then again, some of it is still exactly the same.
Yeah, things change, but then again they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting for sure to get kind of that inside view of a comic book creator from day one almost. I mean, this is definitely Joe Shuster's story, and it's not just his professional story. I mean, this tells a lot about other stuff he went through, him as a person, the people he hung out with, his family. That stuff's all there, or a lot of it is, and it helps to build the context of all of everything else that went on along with it. I mean, it kind of helps. Admittedly, it kind of helps to paint the picture of someone who really got screwed in his career and in his life. I mean, how much of that's intentional, I couldn't tell you, but It's a very strong sentiment throughout the whole book.
And I want to thank you guys for bringing up the art on this. It is exquisite. And to shift styles is amazing. But it's a solid read. It was well thought out. And I'm trying to recall who the publisher was. Super Genius?
Super Genius Comics.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell people to find this book, sit down and read this book, because it will give you a great insight as to what transpired at that time.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, I recommend this as well.
Highly recommended.
Yep. Okay. Well, what were your thoughts about A Study in Emerald?
I'm going to go out and say this too was a great read. I did not read the short story originally, but the twist at the end I thought was really effective. I wish that more writings were of this ilk. Now, hopefully I'm not wrong about having the twist. Did you gentlemen see this also, or am I not reading it correctly?
No, there was a twist at the end, for sure.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree. I thought that was interesting as well.
I make it 3.
That in itself made me think that much more of the story. I thought it was so handled so well and effectively.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just one of those books that you couldn't put it down. This was a one-sitting reading. And granted, it's not a huge book, but it's an intent book. And I was just taken by it.
The twist at the end made me go back and reread it, going, okay, how it's like, how did I miss something before or something? So went back and read it and was like, okay,
It works on allowing the reader to make assumptions.
Right.
And it does a beautiful job of that, I will grant you.
Exactly. Yep. I have not read the short story before, but I probably need to go check it out. And this is another one, a really strong art. What did you think about the little advertisements in between the chapters, or little ads, or that kind of thing?
I thought they were genius, honestly. I thought they were amazing.
What were your
I
thoughts?
was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were just spot on.
I thought they added a nice layer of fun, for lack of a better word, to it. This is fun because I'm really torn on this one. I think the safest way for me to say this is that I didn't enjoy it as much as Les did.
Okay.
The pieces that you guys have both mentioned so far were parts of it that did work really well. And I make it unanimous in not having read Neil Gaiman's short story. Unfortunately, what I have read is all of the Sherlock Holmes stuff, all of the Doyle Sherlock Holmes stuff. I will not claim to have read everything else that everybody has ever written with the character. My problem with this book was that it was a little too derivative. I mean, the crime itself was ripped straight out of one of the novels, and given that that's actually a long form novel, and this is based on a short story, it could not possibly have done it justice. So to me, it seemed ripped off in that regard. The whole thing with the royalty, now that was interesting. That for me was kind of the fun part. I wish that they had used that more in this story, because it would have been a better story in my eyes if they had. I agree wholeheartedly that the art was very good. I really liked the art. I was disappointed in the story itself, though. Maybe I went in with expectations a little too high, but I had high hopes for this book, and it didn't quite reach them for me. This is opinion. Given that this is a review, this is just my opinion.
Right.
Would I recommend the book? Actually, yes, I would still recommend the book for reasons other than that, because I think there's enough other stuff there that it makes this a good book. But as far as the story itself goes, I was disappointed at how derivative it was of, not surprisingly, A Study in Scarlet, which was, I believe, the first full-length novel. There had been a volume or two of short stories before that, but the first novel was A Study in Scarlet, which is actually a really good book, if you ever get around to it.
I think that's where I enjoyed it, though. I knew what it was a version of, but after reading both the Holmes and the Holmes stories by various writers, I thought this was still very well done. It didn't break, to me, it didn't break tradition or anything else. I thought it was just a strong short story that got the reader to think, which was the whole point. And hopefully the readers of this adaptation will do that also. It's just a strong story. That's what I'm looking for in a book. I want the story to be just something to make sure I want to either reread it or intensely read it. I didn't see that it varied all that much from a Holmes book or short story or novella. And I'm sorry, I commend you. I commend them for it. I thought it was just really strong, yet did not vary all that much from the belief. Because I'm one of those that I want to believe that Holmes was a real person, that a person that did exist, things like that. And to me, this was a novel, a short story that lived up to that hype. I kind of wish that some other writers would take this into account also.
See, and that's where I agree with you. I would dearly love to see more stuff written in this world. be it Holmesian or otherwise. I honestly, I would be willing to take another crack at a Holmes story written in this world. For me, it's the world that's interesting. And I mean, maybe my problem was that this was kind of billed as a marriage between Holmes and Lovecraft, and there wasn't nearly enough Lovecraft in this story for my taste. And
Yeah,
that's being a longtime Holmes lover. I wanted more Lovecraft, and the parts that were there, the world that they built in this, I thought it was a really interesting world, and I would really like to see more stuff done in it. I just wish they hadn't started off with something so derivative. I mean, it was for my money, and again, I'm not. This is opinion. I'm not knocking anybody else's opinion, but for my money, I would have. Maybe I would have liked this better if it had been like twice as long, and they had been able to kind of do more with both sides of that story. That might have made me feel better. But this thing just, I mean, you said at the beginning, Les, this book flew by. And for me, that wasn't a good thing because I wanted more. I wanted there to be more story here. And I wanted it to be more entrenched in this world. And I wanted it to not be a study in Scarlet done in 80 pages with a bunch of other interesting stuff going on that got shorted because we're having to put enough of a study in Scarlet in here to make it make sense. But again, like I said, I still recommend this book. Strangely enough, I'm kind of hammering it a lot, but I think it is interesting. I think it is very interesting. I just also think that it could have been. I think I wanted it to be stronger than I thought it was. But anyway,
that's viable.
That's what reviews are for, is to get people's opinions on things.
right.
I'm glad you liked it. I actually was really interested in hearing what you had to say about this one because because I knew what I thought, and I was curious to see how well it lined up. And in a way, I'm kind of glad it didn't, because I'm glad you liked it.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm glad you liked it because maybe the problem was that my expectations were different. And so, I had kind of was hoping that coming into this because I wanted it to be better than I thought it was, and you thought it was better than I thought it was, so that's good. It's good for you, and it's good for anybody else who reads it on our recommendation.
Right. I had not read A Study in Scarlet, so I guess I didn't have that. So I didn't have that as a reference going into reading the book. I did enjoy it. I will agree with what you said regarding the aspects of Lovecraft there weren't. I expected more. I will agree with you with that. I expected a little bit more than what we got. And if this was like a beginning of like maybe a series of short stories, or in this case a series of graphic novels, where it's in this world like you were talking about, that would be great. But just as it is, it was kind of, it was disappointing. I mean, it didn't get me upset, but I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. But
right, which is good in the sense that you didn't want it to end.
Right.
But not good in the sense that, oh, that's it?
Yeah. Well, because I mean, this was touted as a kind of a marriage of these two kind of universes, and it was. It just.
It was like it was too short to go into any of that in any interesting way. That was my problem, was that it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't enough. I wanted more.
Maybe we'll have more. Who knows?
I hope so. I really do. Strange as it sounds, given what I've said here, I really do hope there's more. I'll buy it.
I'll buy it for $1. Buy it for more than
gladly pay
$1.
you Tuesday.
There you go.
So many references.
Mm.
This is one I'm glad I picked up. And I'm of the opinion also that I hope there is more. Who was it that wrote the 7% solution? Was that Nicholas Meyer?
Yeah.
Yes.
And to me, something like that, it was, at that time, was needed if you are a reader of Holmes. And I can say that I was happy they continued that for a while. I think they did 3-4 books total. So I give this one credence, and I certainly hope that they continue with the possibility of expanding that world.
Amen, brother.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a pretty good feeling that you enjoyed doing this as much as I did. Both of these books were really enjoyable.
They were. And I mean, the funny thing is I might have picked up A Study in Emerald otherwise, had we not been doing this. I think the odds that I would have picked up the Shuster book are much lower.
Right.
And honestly, and that's the one I enjoyed more. So clearly my tastes are not in line with my tastes, however that works.
Huh?
Clearly I'm not very good at picking out my own books, so I need help doing that. So we'll have to figure out a way to help each other find new and interesting stuff, and the listeners too.
Definitely. Well, I think we need to do more of this. I think kind of a group review discussion could be a lot of fun. I kind of wish that Liz had been here. I would have really liked to have had her perspective of what she thought of these. And unfortunately, we'll have to get that in person and not in podcast.
Maybe we can figure something out.
We might, we could probably give her a couple of minutes on the next show. Say, hey, what did you think? We can do that.
I think we could.
Roasting would be fun.
All right. Any final thoughts before we take a quick break?
Nope. I think we're good.
I'm just going to say, look into this book, folks. It's well worth it.
Both of them.
Check out both books, definitely.
Absolutely. Come up with your own opinions of how they are. That's always fun.
All righty. With that, we are going to go ahead and take that break, and when we come back, we'll have our weekly picks. We are back. It is time for our weekly picks, and Les leads off this week.
Thank you. And leading off tonight from Lion Forge Comics, I'm presenting the graphic novel Sheets. Sheets is about a young girl who is left in charge of the family laundry business after the unexpected death of her mother. She kind of deals with the customers and her father, who is still grieving, and a character, Mr. Sabertuck, who is committed to destroying whatever she's worked for. The next character in it is Wendell. The book is saying that the girl, Marjorie, feels like a ghost, but in this case, Wendell is a ghost, who is a boy who lost his life and now tries to deal with the afterlife. He is now in that therapy. He has a sheet-dependent identity and a need for purpose in the human world. I'm interested in this because of the way they are presenting it. I've got a feeling that this is going to be a fun read, yet it's going to be somewhat tragic. We don't, right now I don't know what direction they plan on taking it, but how can you go wrong with a haunted laundromat?
Woohoo!
This is an interesting idea.
It does sound interesting. Should be cool.
Yeah.
That's from Lineforge Comics. Mikey, you are next.
Okie dokie. My first pick is an Image book. I'm going with The Weatherman, number 3. This is a really interesting series. This is set. The world has changed. There was some sort of cataclysm, and the authorities, or certain groups anyway, are beginning to suspect that this hippy-dippy weatherman is the guy behind the cataclysm, but he has no knowledge of it whatsoever, which is not stopping some of these organizations from hunting his ass down.
Oh, of course.
Right, and so he and a cop of some sort. I'm not. She's not. She's. I don't think she's a legitimate cop, but she's kind of in that line of work. She's an agent of some sort. Is trying to keep him alive, but it's yeah. He is an interestingly potentially useless character, given that he's so important to the whole thing. It's a really wild and fun ride of a story, with some interesting scope to it, if nothing else. Interesting stakes involved in the story. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
It has been, and it's been doing really well too. So that's cool to see. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in seeing this issue as well. See where we go from there. I am next, and for my first pick, I'm going with Dark Horse Comics, and it's a new miniseries called Terminator Sector War, written by Brian Wood with Jeff Stokely doing art. And this tells the story of a Terminator who came back in 1984, but it's not the Terminator we're thinking of. It's this Terminator goes to New York to locate a NYPD officer. Now, why it's going after her, we don't know. We're gonna have to read the book, but kind of an interesting little twist to the whole Terminator timeline, which has been so messed up because of this movie, so why not? But it's true.
It is so true. It is. Oh my God. I'm just like, I don't know why they keep doing stuff. It's just, and some of it has been really successful, even though it's almost like people love to hate the series at this point. I don't know. I'd love to see them do. Honestly, the last Terminator comic, I don't remember what it was called off the top of my head. Damn it, was actually really good. It was very convoluted, but it was actually really good. So I'm hoping this one will be the same. I'm hoping this one will be good as well.
Yeah, I have high hopes for this one. Yeah, a lot of the Terminator books have been good, but
the movies,
we shall. Well, of course, we got another one coming, and
I don't think
and
anybody
they're
cares at this point.
well, they're pulling a stunt that a lot of other franchises are doing, which is basically going and saying, you know what, these other movies, they didn't happen. Which, in the case of Terminator, with all the time traveling, yeah, you could actually get away with that.
Right,
This is
that's
supposed to be
the one series you can pull that off with, is finally doing it.
this is supposed to be a direct sequel to Terminator 2. So you're basically getting rid of 3 through Terminator Genesis. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. But I'm not sure I really care, but I will definitely pick up this book because I do like Brian Wood's writing. So this should be definitely be interesting.
That is cool.
Yep.
Okay, Les, you're up again.
All right. For my second, Titan Books is reissuing the classic, and that is Alien, the illustrated story, written by Archie Goodwin, cover and interiors by Walt Simonson.
Ooh.
I remember having this when it first came out. This was before the movie came out, and I was so enthralled as to what this was about. This made me go out and buy the book and then go see the movie. And sneaking away from work that day saying that I had to go to the doctor and headed straight for the theater.
Wow.
Dang. Is the statute of limitations up on that? I mean, seriously.
Thank God, yes. That was what, 70 what?
9?
Something like that. Yeah, 79. Because next year's the 40th anniversary.
Cool.
So if you get the chance, find this. This is coming out in a 14 by 17 hardcover. So with the Simonson art and of course Goodwin's writing, to me this was a winner from the word go, and it stands the test of time for sure.
Dang. Yeah. I'm interested.
I had picked up the soft cover they did several years ago, and this was actually the first time I had seen it. I vaguely remember seeing ads for it in the comic books back in the day, but never actually seeing the interiors. And so when I picked this up, yeah, this was a sell for me because I'm a big fan of Simonson's art and Archie Goodwin. The two of them together did the Manhunter books and so on and so forth. So I was excited about checking this out, and it was worth the wait. So them coming out with a hardcover edition, and I'm sure there's going to be some bells and whistles to it as well. Definitely going to be worth the money. Definitely worth it. Alrighty, Mikey, you're up again.
Alrighty. My second pick is a Valiant title, and I'm going with Ninja K number 10. I have talked about this book before, and I'm going to do it again because it is really good. It has been consistently good. We are jumping into a new arc here, so this is a great place to step in and start looking at this stuff. And it looks like one of the fun things about this title is that they've done. I mean, this is Ninjak. This is Colin King, kind of discovering the history of the ninja program, of MI6's ninja program. So there's been some bouncing around. He's like meeting older ninja and getting to know them and kind of fighting with them quite a bit. But anyway, but the deal is that there's been a bunch of jumping back in history and looking at stuff. And this one, it looks like we're going to meet another one of the previous ninja, Ninja H. so this would be set in like the 80s, or at least that's where Ninja H. When I'm sure there will be some of Ninja H's history, and that's set in the 80s. It's actually set present day, so. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this title. This is for me. This is one of my favorite of the Valiant titles right now. So a lot of fun.
It's been a strong book, pretty much from
the beginning. I mean,
from
right
the beginning,
and it has never let up.
Yep,
totally.
I agree, and I can't. It's great jumping on point for those who may be interested in checking out this book. And of course, they do give you a previously recap right there at the front. So
yeah, Valiant's pretty good about that.
So awesome.
That's cool.
Alrighty, I'm up again, and for my second choice, I'm picking a collection. And did I say something earlier about me loving epic collections?
I think you did.
I've heard something about that.
It's come up once or twice before.
I am offering a new epic collection. I'm pleased because it's Defenders. There's not usually a lot of collections of Defenders material. But this one's called The New Defenders. And this takes place during the time where new teams set up, and it's led by former X-Men, Beast, Iceman, and Angel. You still have Valkyrie, but you add Gargoyle and Cloud. I believe Moondragon is still around, hanging around with the group. So this is kind of an interesting time. This is really one of the first times that you have certainly none of the original members, which was Doctor Strange, Hulk, Silver Surfer, Namor, or you even have Nighthawk involved. And this actually collects Defenders 126 through 137, Iceman's miniseries of 1 through 4, and the Beauty and Beast miniseries 1 through 4. So it's really kind of cool that they've gone back and do this collection. And actually, as someone who's read a lot of Defenders, but not really during this time period, I'm definitely psyched to actually rectify that.
It sounds solid.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's kind of an interesting lineup, really, for that group.
Yep. A little bit more of a team for the non-team.
Right. Well, you import 3 people from another team, and that it makes it easy to build that. But yeah.
Right.
But those are a fun bunch of X-Men too. So.
Right. Exactly. Les, you are up again.
All right. My third choice tonight is another graphic novel. This is The Vigilant. This is a group from Fleetway, a publisher in Britain, and it concerns the group of The Vigilant, where you've got a team up of, let's see, some of the characters were Adam Eterno, and the group is The Leopard, Steel Commando, Dr. Sin, Pete's Pocket Army, Blake Edmonds, Yo, and Thunderbolt the Avenger. This is a group that is made of super beings, warlocks, monsters, warriors, and they are releasing this to bring the idea of this group to a whole new generation. I want to see what they've done because I'm not familiar with this group, and hopefully they will have enough backstory to keep me interested. You've got various artists, various writers, so if you've got 6 or 8 stories, that's well worth the time and money to pick this one up.
Cool.
Yep. Be interesting to see a superhero team from a totally different culture, from another country.
Yeah.
Kind of a neat idea.
Definitely.
Bringing it over here.
Alrighty. Mikey, you are up again.
Okay. Well, I've got a collection too this time around. Image Comics is bringing us what is, at least for now, the final trade of Postal. This is Volume 7. This collects issue 25 and the 2 special issues, the Mark issue and the Laura issue that came after number 25. So this is the end of the current run of Postal. I am still optimistic that we're going to see more Postal, hopefully as soon as next year. So hopefully the end here is not really the end, but hopefully that's also not just me being hopeful, right?
Mm.
These were all really interesting stories too when they came out in floppies. So having a collection of them is awesome.
Yep. Boy, you got a lot of hope there, don't you?
I am very hopeful.
I think something tells me your hope will be rewarded. So we shall see.
That's what I hear. It's what Scuttlebutt is, but you know.
Yeah. Alrighty, for my third pick, I'm doing another trade. This is from DC Comics, and is the JSA by Jeff Johns, and this is book 2. This collects issues 16 through 25, plus stories from Secret Origins of Supervillains number 1, JSA Our Worlds at War number 1, JLA JSA Secret Files number 1, and the graphic novel JLA JSA Virtue and Vice. Jeff Johns did such a heck of a run on Justice Society, or JSA. Him and David Boyer, who was also, the two of them were co-writing this book. And it was just such a fun read. There was a definite family vibe as you know, you've got the older generation mentoring the next generation of heroes, but it wasn't so much of, hey, I'm teaching you how to do this or to be a better hero. It was definitely more of a family vibe, and that's one of the things I really love about the book. And I'm glad to see this getting a collection. Hopefully that. I'm still expecting that new Justice Society book, but you know, it may still be a little while. But when they do stuff like this, kind of makes you wonder. Although, you know, they did announce they're doing a live action Stargirl on their DC's streaming service, and that the Justice Society is supposed to be a part of that show as well. So, you know, and of course Jeff Johns is behind all of this, so that could be fueling this. But hey, whatever. It makes sense. Whatever it takes. It's good to have these stories out there in front of new eyes.
I want to see this out too, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff between those covers too.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of material. I didn't catch the page count, but it's quite a bit.
There's Awful lot of issues you're naming off there, that's for sure.
Exactly. Yep. Alrighty. Any special shout outs or mentions this week? Other than we miss you, Liz, and, well, hopefully we'll have you back next week.
Yeah, what he said. I don't have any others.
Okay.
Nothing here.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, we'll get to our regular shout outs, and first off, of course, is Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. Thank you guys very, very much for that. You should definitely check out their music. We'll have a link in our show notes, so please go do that. Second of all, I want to thank the fine folks that make up Podern Family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship. You should definitely check out some of their shows, especially if you're looking for a podcast to get involved with other than ours. Thank you. And how you do that? Well, you go to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Podern Family. That's all as one word. And just scroll down and whatever catches your eye, download it and check it out. And you never know, you may gain a new show you need to listen to every week. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for your support. Thank you for downloading today's episode, and we do appreciate that. We value your feedback. Any comment, question, suggestion, complaint, observation, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. And there are several ways you can do that. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net is one way, or you can go to the website and click on the About Us tab, and there's a contact form that you can fill out there. We'll get that. You can contact us through social media. We are on Facebook, the Fellowship of the Geeks, and obviously we are on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there if you'd like. You can also follow our personal Twitter accounts if you so desire. Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at Newman_L. And I can be found at Tom TC Geek. And wherever you download and listen to our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, or YouTube, we would be so appreciative if you would take the time to rate and review us. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for listening. You guys, hope you all have a good week. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,